Oregon Joint Line!
Hi everybody, welcome to the updated layout tour of the Oregon Joint Line. A lot of the focus of this video will be the progress that's been made in the layout since the last layout tour 3 years ago. As a reminder, the Oregon Joint Line is a proto-Lance Northern Pacific and Great Northern Line running through eastern Oregon set in 1969. After I moved the dispatcher's office and my workshop to its own room, space was freed up for this lumber mill scene. I really wanted to dedicate a large portion of layout real estate to a single industry to hint at the immensity of a real Northwest lumber mill. The 3 main mill buildings are my first attempt at scratch building large structures. I even added a mill office building, an employee parking lot, and a truck repair facility for log trucks. The operating day begins with the log train arriving from the woods. Then they switch the mill tracks, interchange with the Northern Pacific and Union Pacific, and then return to the woods with empties. Next we get this view of the visible portion of the South Staging Yard. The coal train is on the Great Northern Main pulling up to the depot for a crew change at Silvies. And then we have Harney Junction where the Northern Pacific and Great Northern lines join to form the Oregon Joint Line. Silvies Yard is an important base for local and helper operations.
Silvies Switch to Silvies Yard, Master. Are you ever going to let us go to lunch?
The 1.8% helper grade begins right at the abandoned tunnel of the former NP Burns branch. The Graystone Cement plant, which is served by the Silvies Switch engine, is one of the largest industries on the layout.
Helper to 656, we're shoving on the rear. Okay, 656, here we go.
The town of Emigrant is the junction with Union Pacific's Burns branch.
LP Burns local, just another 12-hour day on the U-Pay.
Next up is the Hines lumber mill. Followed by the Emigrant Creek Bridge. As you may notice, I've been replacing a lot of the backdrop paintings with actual photographs taken in Oregon Joint Line locations. I originally used photos of the Oregon Joint Line territory to select the base paint color for the scenery in my layout. And because of this, the backdrop photos are pretty well matched to the scenery now. The base paint is actually more of a match for the dried grass in the area than it is for the dirt. On the steeper slopes, I'll actually dry brush in some dirt color. Now we're coming up to the most recently completed section of scenery at Snowline. I considered using a summit tunnel at the top, but because it's a sighting location, I decided to use a summit cut. Snowline Ranch is a high-elevation cattle ranch with acreage on both sides of the track. To allow the rancher access to both sides of the track, the Oregon Joint Line has installed a bridge. This area has become one of my favorite parts of the layout. The 80-foot passenger cars look really great, rounding the 56-inch radius curves in N scale. That'd be the equivalent of a 103-inch radius in HO scale. At the bottom of the hill, I added this abandoned homestead scene. If you ever travel through eastern Oregon, you'll see plenty of abandoned houses like this.
Well, hi there. This is Dwight Hamilton from Malheur Feeds. How are you today? Well, I'm good, but my wife, she's been having some issues with the thyroid. The poor thing, she just can't sleep through the night, and she keeps me awake, too. Great Northern Dayville Switch.
This is the area they lay out with the most work left to do, and there's still plenty of stand-in structures in place. With most of the work done on the rural sections of the layout, this will be the next focus.
7th Avenue job to Monument.
This terminal complex features 3 daisy-chained yards: Great Northern's Dayville Yard, Northern Pacific's Monument Yard, and Forest Products Shortline Oregon and Northeastern's Scanlon Yard.
Job 201 to Monument. Make me happy now. Got a hot date with some wild turkey.
Monument Yard is the largest yard in the layout and has a capacity of over 200 cars.
Monument trip to Monument.
I had 3 20-foot plus backdrop photos printed to be hung around the Dayville Monument Scanlon complex. I think the biggest issue with photographing your own backdrops, especially with very long sections, is matching scenes with consistent lighting and weather conditions. I use Photoshop to make adjustments so the backdrops flow better from scene to scene, but if I had unlimited time to go out to Eastern Oregon and wait for perfect conditions, I could do better. This is Scanlon Yard on Forest Products Shortline Oregon and Northeastern Railroad. The Oregon and Northeastern is inspired by logging railroads which actually survived in Eastern Oregon into the diesel era. The only operating signals on the layout so far protect this automatic interlocking where the Oregon and Northeastern crosses the Oregon joint line. Railroads often follow watercourses because that's usually the easiest grades. But in the model railroad world, we tend to have our streams perpendicular to the tracks. So to insert a little more realism into my layout design, the Oregon joint line follows the South Fork of the John Day River for 35 feet. There's a bit of backtracking required to get to the lower level beyond Picture Gorge. At the tunnel portal, the separation between decks is only 7 inches. That's much too tight for any major scenery or operational features, but compared to the helix, which was the original means to get between decks, this was a much better option. GN Junction marks the end of the joint trackage between the Great Northern and Northern Pacific. This is the end of the scenic portion of the layout where both lines enter staging. Towards the far north end of staging is a stub-ended fiddle yard, which houses oddball cars you really don't want appearing in every session. Finally, we get to the end of the layout where stacked reversing loops, the north end below and the south end above, turn trains for restaging. There's also a continuous run connection which houses empty and loaded coal trains, which ensures that loads are always going northbound and empties are always going southbound. When we look through this opening, we'll see the location where we started this layout tour. That concludes the Oregon Joint Line layout tour. I really appreciate the response to the operational videos I've posted. They're meant to be entertaining and informative from the perspective of a lifelong railroad professional. Please subscribe so you don't miss any upcoming video releases.